Millionaire panics when he encounters a gardener who resembles his late wife, wearing an identical earring. Soft rain fell gently on William Hawthorne's Victorian mansion, like a silent lament echoing against the cold, imposing walls of the house. The dim light of the study illuminated William's face, revealing features marked by sadness and solitude. He sat behind the large, dark wooden desk, surrounded by photographs of Elizabeth, his late wife. Each image was a vivid reminder of a love that had flourished under the sun, now overshadowed by absence and pain. With a deep sigh, William gazed out the fogged window, watching the raindrops slide down the glass. The landscape outside, once vibrant, seemed a reflection of his soul, gray and faded. He lost himself in memories, recalling Elizabeth's laughter and the way her eyes sparkled when she spoke of her dreams to travel the world. The life they had planned together was now an unachievable utopia. How could I have let her go without cherishing every moment? He murmured to himself, guilt creeping through his heart like a shadow. Meanwhile, outside in the garden that had once been a spectacle of colors and fragrances, Emily, the new gardener, arrived with a radiant smile. The contrast between her vibrant energy and the melancholy of the place was palpable. She surveyed the area, noticing the neglect and sadness surrounding. With determination, she began to tend to what could be revived. There's so much hidden beauty here, she thought, as her agile hands pulled weeds and exposed the soil. William, still lost in his grief, couldn't help but notice the young gardener. He watched her from a distance, intrigued by the grace with which she moved among the plants. There was something familiar about her presence, something that reminded him of the happiest days spent with Elizabeth. Emily's gaze, illuminated by a glimmer of hope, washed over him with an unexpected wave of nostalgia. When she turned slightly, William noticed the earrings swinging from her ears, identical to the ones Elizabeth used to wear. A chill settled in his chest, and memories began to flood back. "Aren't they beautiful?" Emily remarked, kneeling to care for a neglected rosebush. "I believe these flowers have so much to say, if only we can hear them." William hesitated, his voice caught in his throat. "Yes, I used to think the garden was alive, that it spoke to me," he replied, his tone heavy with melancholy. "But over time, I lost that connection." Emily looked at him, her eyes shining with understanding. "Sometimes it takes a little light for us to see what's hidden. Have you considered how you might bring that light back?" William felt a mix of curiosity and resistance. "It's a place of mourning for me now. I don't know if I can, or if I want to change that. But grief doesn't have to be a burden," Emily said, standing up to face him. "It can be the beginning of something new. A garden can be reborn just like we can." Those words touched him deeply. William felt an unexpected connection with the young woman, yet the pain of loss still held him captive. He remembered Elizabeth and the life they should have built together, and the idea of opening his heart again seemed like an insurmountable challenge. "You don't understand," he murmured in response. "The pain is a constant companion. It can also be a teacher," Emily replied with a gentle smile. "Let's work together, one step at a time, and who knows, one day you might see what I see in this place." William hesitated for a moment, looking into her eyes that seemed to reflect a future he dared not imagine. "Maybe," he finally said, unaware that those words would be the first step on a journey of rediscovery he never thought he would take. William watched as raindrops slid down the window of his office, each one seeming to carry away a fraction of his memories. The soft sound of water tapping against the glass was like a lament, an echo of the pain that had accompanied him since Elizabeth's death. The photographs of his wife, arranged around him, were silent witnesses to his solitude. He lost himself in thought, reliving laughter and whispers from a past that felt increasingly distant. Sadness enveloped him like a heavy cloak, and he felt unable to move, trapped in a cycle of memories. Outside in the garden, Emily moved with vibrant energy as if nature itself were calling her. Her arms were tangled in plants and flowers, and her smile radiated a light that contrasted sharply with the melancholy that dominated the scene. William, watching her from afar, felt a spark of curiosity. It was the first time in a long while that he had seen someone care so deeply about that space, which had become a symbol of his grief. "You really should see this, Mr. Hawthorne," Emily exclaimed, pulling a faded rose and holding it up enthusiastically. "Look at these colors. They're just waiting to be brought back to life." William hesitated but eventually approached, drawn in by the passion in her voice. "It's just a garden, Emily," he replied, trying to hide the fragility in his own voice. It's beyond recovery. No, it isn't, she insisted, with a sparkle in her eyes that reminded him of something he had known before. Emily looked at him, her surprise quickly transforming into an enigmatic smile. Oh, these? They belong to my grandmother. She always said they were magical, capable of bringing back good memories. I think she was right. The conversation flowed, and as they exchanged words about plants and flowers, William began to feel more at ease. Emily spoke with genuine passion, and he realized that her presence brought a lightness to the garden, a space he had turned into a sanctuary of pain. Do you enjoy gardening? He asked, trying to connect with her. Completely, Emily replied, her eyes sparkling. When I lost my parents, it was in the garden that I found peace. The plants helped me overcome the pain. Every flower that blooms is a new chance, a new life. It's as if they tell me that everything can blossom again. Emily's confession resonated within him, and for a moment, he forgot his sadness. I didn't know you had gone through that, William said, his tone gentle. I think we all have our battles. Yes, and that's what makes us human, Emily smiled. Pain is a part of life, but we don't have to carry it alone. We can transform it. Before we continue with this touching story, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any stories. And let us know in the comments which city you're watching this video from. William watched her as she spoke, noticing the passion and determination in her voice. Something in his heart began to open, a seed of hope he didn't know still existed. He felt that, like the garden, he too needed revitalization, but the pain still held him back. Every word from Emily was like a breath of fresh air for his soul, but Elizabeth's shadow still lingered, like a distant echo. Do you really believe a garden can change everything? He asked, the vulnerability in his voice more apparent. I not only believe it, I've seen it happen, Emily replied, her gaze steady. Sometimes a new beginning is all we need to find our way back to happiness. And in that moment, William realized that life, just like the garden, could bloom again, even if he didn't know exactly how to take the first step. William Hawthorne was in his office, surrounded by an aura of melancholy. The rain was falling outside, and the sound of water hitting the windows seemed to echo his own sadness. He looked at the photos of Elizabeth, each one a window to a happier time, now distant like a faded dream. The memories haunted him, and he felt trapped in a cycle of pain, unable to move forward. In his mind, the image of Elizabeth smiling, her hair blowing in the wind, seemed so vivid that he could almost hear her laughter. It was in this state of vulnerability that William decided to take a walk in the garden, a place that had once reflected the love they shared, but had now become a symbol of his loss. As he stepped outside, he spotted Emily, the new gardener, working with dedication. The contrast between her vibrant energy and the sadness that permeated the place was almost tangible. She was kneeling, planting new flowers, and the way she tended to the earth stirred something within him. He couldn't help but watch as she moved gracefully, as if dancing with nature. He hesitated to approach, but the urge was strong. Isn't it a bit early to start planting? He asked, trying to hide the fragility in his voice. Emily looked up, a smile lighting up her face. It's never too early for a new beginning, Mr. Hawthorne. The garden needs life, and I'm here to bring it back. Her voice was soft yet firm, an invitation for him to join her in transforming that space. I'm not sure if that's possible, he said, looking at the dry soil and the wilting plants. This place, it seems beyond saving. With a little care and love, everything can bloom again, Emily replied, her eyes shining. She turned to him, and William noticed the earrings she wore, identical to those that belonged to Elizabeth. A knot formed in his throat at the sight of what seemed to be an echo of his deceased wife. Where did you get those earrings? He asked, curiosity mixed with a slight fear. Emily hesitated for a moment, but then smiled as if she had been waiting for that question. They were my grandmother's. She always said they were special, that they brought good luck. The way she spoke seemed not only a defense, but an attempt to connect with him. They're beautiful, aren't they? They have a story. William felt a tightness in his chest. Yes, very beautiful, he murmured, his mind spinning around the connection that was beginning to form. Elizabeth also had a love for flowers. She dreamed of having a garden full of color and life. I couldn't do that for her. Why not try now? Emily suggested. You can still honor her memory while creating something new. This garden can be a space for remembrance and renewal at the same time. Renewal, he repeated, the word settling in his mind. I don't know if I'm ready for that. Emily tilted her head, her penetrating gaze fixed on him. No one is ready for pain, Mr. Hawthorne, but we can choose how to deal with it. Gardening helped me cope with the loss of my parents. Every plant I put in the ground is a way to remember and move forward. Her words echoed in his mind, and something within him began to shift. He realized that perhaps he didn't have to remain trapped in his pain forever. Do you really believe it's possible to find a new path? He asked, his vulnerability exposed. Absolutely, Emily replied, filled with conviction. Life is made of cycles. What has died can be reborn in unexpected ways. You just have to be willing to let the pain go. William looked at the garden, now with a new perspective. The flowers that still struggled for space seemed to promise a different future, and this idea washed over him like a wave of hope. Maybe you're right, he said, a faint smile emerging on his lips for the first time in months. Maybe we should start working together. Yes, exclaimed Emily, her contagious enthusiasm brightening the air. Let's make this garden a place that Elizabeth would have loved, a space where we can remember and celebrate her life while also creating new memories. As they talked and the sun began to shine through the clouds, William realized that even wrapped in his pain, there was a path ahead, a path that could be walked with Emily by his side. And for the first time in a long time, he felt that perhaps, just perhaps, life could still offer him a future. William decided he needed to understand more about Elizabeth and what she truly desired. With a heavy heart but determined spirit, he dressed and set out for Mrs. Jenkins's house, an elderly neighbor who had been a friend of Elizabeth since her youth. As he approached the small stone house, the aroma of freshly baked goods wafted through the air, reminding him of moments when Elizabeth used to chat with Mrs. Jenkins on long afternoons. He knocked on the door, and after a moment, Mrs. Jenkins appeared, her warm smile marked by age. "William, what brings you here?" she exclaimed, pulling him inside with a welcoming gesture. The interior of the house was cozy, filled with framed photographs and fresh flowers in vases. "Hello, Mrs. Jenkins. I need a little help." "I wanted to hear more about Elizabeth," said William, his voice trembling as he spoke his wife's name. The woman nodded, her eyes shining with understanding. "Ah, dear Elizabeth. She was a young woman full of dreams, you know. She always talked about wanting to have a garden full of flowers, a place where she could lose herself in her own world," Mrs. Jenkins said, bringing a cup of tea and a slice of cake to William. She had a special love for flowers. She believed that each one had a story to tell. William settled in, taking a sip of the tea. She never got the chance to realize that. "I let our dreams fade away, Mrs. Jenkins. The garden is as neglected as I feel." "Don't be so hard on yourself, William. Sometimes people need time to find their way back," Mrs. Jenkins replied, looking at him with empathy. "But Elizabeth wanted you to be happy. She dreamed of seeing that garden vibrant and full of life, and I'm sure she would want you to bring those colors back." I found a box of her letters. Some talked about her wishes and fears. She mentioned the pressure of being a wife, of setting her dreams aside. "I feel guilty," William confessed, his voice heavy with pain. "She always loved you, William, but she also needed the freedom to be who she was. Sometimes couples forget to dream together," Mrs. Jenkins said gently. "Did you know she dreamed of traveling the world? A dream that never came true?" "No, I didn't know that," he murmured, lost in thought. "What else did she want?" Mrs. Jenkins smiled nostalgically. She talked about visiting gardens around the world, like the ones at Versailles or Monet's gardens. She wanted to bring those inspirations into her own life. Once, she even drew a design for a garden right here at your house. William furrowed his brow in surprise. "Drawings? Do you have any? I'd like to see." "Oh, let me see if I can find them," Mrs. Jenkins said, getting up with some difficulty and going to an old drawer. She returned with a yellowed piece of paper filled with sketches of flowers and plants. "Here it is." She wanted a space where people could gather, laugh, and share stories. William looked at the drawings, feeling a wave of emotion. "I let the garden become a place of mourning. I never thought it could be a space of joy. It's time to change that, William. Do it for her, but also for yourself. Start living again, dear," Mrs. Jenkins said, her gaze encouraging. He held the drawing firmly, a new determination rising within him. "Thank you, Mrs. Jenkins. I promise I will honor Elizabeth's memory and, who knows, perhaps realize some of her dreams." "That's all she ever wanted," the woman replied, winking. "And who knows, maybe you'll find a new dream along the way." William left Mrs. Jenkins's house with a renewed sense of purpose. He knew he needed to act, not only to honor the past but also to reconnect with the life he had left behind. Mrs. Jenkins' words echoed in his mind, and he was determined to transform the garden into a space that reflected not only Elizabeth's memory, but also the hope for a vibrant future. The morning sun illuminated William's garden, which had been a space of memories and mourning until now. With the new energy Emily brought, the place began to transform into a true oasis of life and color. Birds sang cheerfully, and the scent of freshly planted flowers filled the air, creating an atmosphere of hope and renewal. William watched from his porch, his mind still a bit reluctant, but his heart beginning to feel a gentle awakening. "William," Emily's voice called him, interrupting his thoughts. She was crouched near a flower bed, her hands dirty with soil and a smile radiating happiness. "You need to see this." He approached, still cautious but curious. "What did you find?" he asked, trying to hide the tension in his voice. "These flowers, they're adapting so well here," Emily said, pointing to a row of lilies, their petals shimmering in the sunlight. "They're going to bloom soon, don't you think that's a sign?" William hesitated. "Maybe, or maybe it's just flowers growing. Signs are only what we make of them, right?" Emily looked at him, a bit disappointed. "Do you really believe life is that simple? Sometimes a little miracle is just what we need to remember how to live." He fell silent, watching her. The passion with which she spoke about the plants fascinated him, but he didn't know how to open himself to this new reality. The idea of a miracle frightened him because it meant letting go of his pain, and that was something he wasn't ready to do. "Let's do something special," Emily suggested, interrupting his thoughts. "What if we organize a community event to revitalize the garden? That way everyone can bring their plants and stories. We can turn our morning into a celebration of life." The idea left William apprehensive, but he couldn't help but notice the excitement in her eyes. "A community event?" he repeated, pondering. "Do you think people would care?" "Of course. The garden has a story, and you have a story. People want to connect, especially in moments like this," she replied, brimming with enthusiasm. William nodded slowly. "All right, if that's what you want, we can try." In the following days, the energy in the garden transformed. William and Emily worked together, preparing everything for the event. William began to open up more, sharing his knowledge about the plants while Emily brought new ideas and a vibrant vision for the space. Their conversations became more frequent, and he found himself laughing at her jokes and forgetting, even if just for a moment, the pain that accompanied him. The night before the event, William lay restless in his bed. He couldn't stop thinking about how he had allowed himself to be swept away by this new dynamic with Emily. What was he doing? He felt guilty, as if he were betraying Elizabeth by allowing himself to feel joy again. On the day of the event, the sky was clear, and a gentle breeze seemed to carry a sense of celebration. People began to arrive, bringing their own plants and stories. William watched the joy on their faces, and for the first time in a long time, he felt a glimmer of hope. "William," Emily called, pulling him closer to her. "Look at this." She was surrounded by children planting flowers in a newly prepared area. "They're so excited. Look how dedicated they are." It's really beautiful," he replied, a smile starting to form on his lips. "Come, help them." "Cash translation," Emily exclaimed, pulling him to join them. And so, he found himself kneeling on the ground, hands in the dirt, surrounded by laughter and playfulness. The joy was contagious, and for a brief moment, he forgot everything, focusing only on the simplicity of the moment. "William, are you having fun?" Emily asked, observing him with a playful look. "Maybe a little," he admitted, laughing. "Just don't let my friends find out." She smiled, her eyes sparkling. "Don't worry, this is our little secret." As they continued working, a dark cloud began to form on the horizon. "Looks like we're in for a storm," Emily commented, looking up at the sky. "Let's hope it doesn't ruin the event," William replied, a bit concerned. However, when the first raindrop fell, everyone was so engaged in the activity that the worry quickly dissipated. William and Emily found themselves under a tree, seeking shelter from the rain, which began to fall more heavily. There, amid the storm and the sounds of joy around them, the tension between them heightened, and a comfortable silence settled. Their gazes met, and William felt his heart race. "You really made a difference here," he said, lowering his voice to almost a whisper. Emily smiled, but there was something deeper in her eyes, a mutual understanding of what each was facing. "And so did you. We're in this together, William." In that moment, under the falling rain, William realized there could be room in his heart for more than just the memories of Elizabeth. The garden became a symbol of renewal, a space where pain and joy could coexist, where the past could intertwine with the future. William was in his office, the late afternoon sun filtering through heavy curtains, casting long shadows over the desk cluttered with papers and framed photos. The image of Elizabeth smiling at him on a sunny day seemed to shine brightly, while the echo of her laughter still resonated in his mind. Emily's presence in his life had introduced a new dynamic, but he felt lost, trapped between the memory of his wife and the feelings that were beginning to emerge for his gardener. He stepped away from the desk and began pacing back and forth, his heavy footsteps echoing in the silence of the room. The sight of Emily working in the garden, her hair blowing in the wind and a smile on her lips, left him conflicted. How can I allow myself to feel this? He thought, anguished. The idea of moving on felt like a betrayal to Elizabeth's memory, but the pain of loneliness was unbearable. As his tumultuous thoughts swirled in his mind, a gentle knock at the door interrupted his turmoil. It was Emily, her expression a mix of concern and determination. William? She entered without waiting for a response. Can we talk? I'm not in the mood, Emily, he replied, the coldness in his voice reflecting his internal conflict. I need some time alone. I understand, but you can't just shut yourself in here. That won't help, she insisted, concern evident in her tone. We need to talk about what happened at the event. I can see you're struggling. He took a deep breath, trying to control the storm of emotions threatening to overflow. Struggling? That's a polite way to say I'm desperate. You don't understand, Emily. The pain. It's all I know right now. Emily stepped closer, her expression softening. I know it's hard. Losing someone we love leaves a huge hole in us. I've been through it too. But isolating yourself isn't the answer. What you're feeling may be different, but it doesn't have to be a betrayal. William felt a wave of frustration. How can you say that? You didn't know Elizabeth. She was everything to me. How can I look at you and not see her presence beside you? I'm not trying to take her place, William, Emily said, her voice steady. I'm trying to be someone who can help you find a way out of this pain. You don't have to move forward alone. He turned to look out the window at the garden, which, like him, was in a state of transition. You don't know what it's like to live with this guilt. The earrings you're wearing, they belonged to her. How can I feel attracted to you knowing they are a constant reminder of everything I've lost? I didn't wear the earrings to hurt you, Emily replied, her gaze locked onto his. They were a gift for a new life, not a burden. Elizabeth wanted you to be happy, William. Do you think she would want to see you trapped in your pain? Her words resonated deeply, but he still felt as if he were in a dark cave. I don't know if I should let you in, he confessed, vulnerability evident in his voice. William, you're not betraying Elizabeth by seeking happiness again. You're honoring the life you had together by allowing new experiences into your life, Emily said, her voice soft yet firm. Loving again doesn't diminish what you felt for her. Love is a plant that adapts and grows, and you can make space for that in your heart. He closed his eyes, imagining what she was saying. The idea of allowing himself to love again felt so distant, but there was something in her words that made him hesitate. What if I can't? What if I mess everything up? Then we'll figure it out together, Emily replied, a comforting smile appearing on her face. I'm here for that. You don't have to face this alone. William looked at her, seeing the determination and compassion in her eyes. He wanted to believe he could take a step forward, that he could honor Elizabeth while also opening his heart to the possibility of something new. But the shadow of pain still enveloped him, and he needed time. I need a moment, he finally said, his voice heavy with emotion. I need time to think. I'll be in the garden, Emily replied, understanding in her gaze. When you're ready, I'll be here. And with that, she left the office, leaving William alone with his thoughts once again. But somehow the light seemed a little brighter. William sat in his office, the walls surrounded by portraits of Elizabeth that seemed to watch him with a mix of love and expectation. The late afternoon light filtered through the curtains, creating a soft, melancholic atmosphere. The memories of his wife haunted him, and the pain of loss trapped him in an endless cycle of mourning. He felt torn between the love he still held for Elizabeth and the growing attraction he felt for Emily, the new gardener who had brought a fresh energy into his life. In a surge of emotion, he picked up the phone and dialed the number of an old friend, Henry, who had always been a good advisor. After a few rings, the familiar voice of his friend echoed on the other end of the line. William, it's been so long, how are you? Henry asked, his cheerful tone contrasting sharply with the sadness weighing on William's heart. Not so well, Henry, I'm struggling. William hesitated, feeling the heaviness of his words. I feel like I'm stuck between the past and the present. Emily. She's a wonderful person, but I can't shake the guilt I feel for thinking about her. Henry sighed, understanding the complexity of the situation. Look, my friend, life goes on. Elizabeth would want you to be happy. You can't punish yourself for that. If you're feeling drawn to Emily, maybe you should explore that connection. But what if that dishonors her memory? William questioned, his voice trembling. The guilt consumed him, and he didn't know how to navigate this new reality. Don't forget what she wanted. You loved her, and that doesn't change, Henry insisted. Sometimes love is about letting go and allowing new love to enter. Think about it. William hung up, his mind racing with Henry's words. He looked out the window, observing the garden. The image of Emily working there, her smile lighting up her face, flooded his thoughts. It was as if she brought life to that space, which had once only reminded him of his pain. Determined to face his feelings, William stepped out of the office and walked toward the garden. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, and his heart raced as he spotted Emily crouched down, tending to some flowers. "Emily?" he called, a bit hesitant but resolute. She turned, a radiant smile brightening her face. "Hi, William. What do you think of the flowers I planted today? They'll bring some color to this place." "They look beautiful," he replied, forcing a smile. "But I need to talk to you about something important." Emily's expression shifted and she stood up, wiping her hands on her pants. "Sure, what's going on?" He hesitated, the words feeling heavy on his tongue. I've been feeling confused. About us. About what we're doing here." He paused, observing her reaction. "You know I still miss Elizabeth, right? That makes everything more complicated." Emily took a step forward, her expression calm. "I understand, William. I feel the pain of loss too. I lost my parents a few years ago and gardening has been a way for me to heal. But I'm not here to replace her. I want you to know that I'm here to support you." William felt a wave of emotion wash over him at her words. "I don't want you to feel like a burden or that I'm being disloyal to her memory. The earrings you're wearing, they belonged to Elizabeth. When I saw them, a part of me felt frightened." Emily smiled softly, her gaze deep and understanding. "I didn't know that. I found them secondhand and thought they were beautiful. But if they bother you, I can—" "No," he interrupted, his voice firm. "I want you to wear them. They symbolize something I can't explain. Then maybe that means you're ready to move forward, even if it's slowly," Emily said with an encouraging smile. He took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his pain begin to lift. "Do you really think that's possible?" "I believe so. Love is a journey, not a destination, and your heart is capable of loving again." She took another step closer, and William felt the proximity as a sign of hope. "I want to try," he finally confessed, his eyes locked on hers. "I want to try to understand what this means for us." Emily smiled, a glimmer of understanding crossing her face. "Then let's do this together, one day at a time." William felt an unexpected lightness in his chest. It was a small step, but a significant one. The pain of Elizabeth would always be there, but perhaps it would no longer be an obstacle. Instead, it could be a part of his story, a chapter he could now share with another love that was beginning to blossom. William looked at the garden, which was starting to come to life again under Emily's guidance. The flowers were blooming in an explosion of colors, and the atmosphere of hope and renewal enveloped every corner of the space. He felt the weight of his sorrow slowly being replaced by a new energy, something he hadn't experienced in a long time. As Emily tended to the plants, he decided to join her, grabbing a shovel and starting to dig alongside her. "You know, Elizabeth always dreamed of a garden like this," William said, glancing at Emily, who was focused on her tasks. Emily looked up and smiled. She would have loved to see this. "It's so rewarding to see everything bloom, don't you think?" "Yes, it's wonderful," William replied, his heart warming at the idea that he was in some way honoring his wife's memory. "I let this space deteriorate. It was like I was stuck in a cycle of grief. Sometimes you have to let go for something new to grow," Emily said, with a wisdom that seemed beyond her years. "Life goes on, and the garden teaches us that every day." William nodded, feeling lighter. "You're a true inspiration, Emily. I never thought I could find someone who makes me feel this way again." "That's what gardens do," she replied with a mysterious smile. "They remind us that beauty can arise from ashes, and flowers, they always find a way to bloom. even in the toughest conditions. As they worked, William began to open up about his feelings and memories of Elizabeth. He realized that talking about her was no longer a burden, but a way to celebrate the life they had shared. "I used to think that any new happiness would be a betrayal of what we had," he confessed. "But now I see that Elizabeth wanted me to be happy." Emily paused for a moment, looking at William with depth. "And you deserve that happiness, William. It's not dishonoring her memory, it's honoring the love you shared." "You're right," he said, feeling closer to Emily than ever. "I've decided I want to make this garden a special place, not just for me, but for everyone. A space that reflects the joy Elizabeth wished for." "That's a beautiful idea," Emily replied, her eyes shining. "We can organize a community event to revitalize the garden together. Invite people to bring their plants and stories. It would be a way to unite the community and celebrate life." William smiled, envisioning the possibility of seeing the garden flourish, not just with plants, but with laughter and stories. "Yes, let's do it. An event for everyone, where each person can contribute. I also want to plant a tree in honor of Elizabeth, as a symbol of her presence here." Emily smiled enthusiastically. "That will be perfect. A tree is a symbol of strength and renewal. It will be a place where people can come to remember her." The two continued to work together, laughing and sharing stories as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The connection between them grew stronger with each moment, and William felt his guilt and fear slowly dissipating. On the morning of the event, the garden was vibrant, full of life and colors. William and Emily were excited, surrounded by the community that had come together to help. People brought plants from their homes, each with a unique story, creating a mosaic of memories and hopes. "Look at all this," William said, emotional. "It's so much more than I could have imagined." "We're just getting started," Emily replied, holding his hand for a moment before stepping away to help organize things. "This is just the first of many flowers to bloom here." When the tree planting ceremony began, William felt Elizabeth's presence by his side. He took a deep breath, looking up at the sky, and then at the crowd that had gathered. "Today, we plant not just a tree, but also hopes and dreams. This tree will be a symbol of the life we continue to live, in memory of Elizabeth and everything she meant to us." Applauding, the community united around them, and William felt a wave of gratitude and love. The pain that had once imprisoned him was now transforming into space for new possibilities. He looked at Emily and saw not just a gardener, but a partner in his journey of renewal. Together they were ready to face the future, surrounded by flowers and new memories. William was sitting in his favorite armchair, the smell of old paper filling the air around him. The soft light of late afternoon filtered through the windows of his study, casting dancing shadows on the walls adorned with portraits of his beloved Elizabeth. The box of letters he had found was open in his lap, but now it was a worn diary that captured his attention. He had no idea that this simple discovery would change everything. With trembling hands, he opened the first page of the diary, Elizabeth's elegant handwriting jumping out at him. Each word seemed to pulse with life, revealing not only her thoughts but also her deepest feelings. William read aloud as if he wished to hear her voice again. "Dear William, sometimes I feel like I'm living in a dream. What I desire most is for us to travel the world together. But I feel like I'm setting aside my dreams to be the wife you want." The pain and guilt intertwined in his heart as he heard those words. "You shouldn't have felt that way, my love," he murmured, running his fingers over the yellowed pages. "I never wanted you to sacrifice your dreams for me." The thought of Elizabeth trapped in her own insecurities and fears made William feel like a prisoner in his own sorrow. Turning the pages, he found a passage that made him stop in his tracks. "If I ever depart before you, I want you to know that I left my earrings for the woman you will love after me. May she bring joy to your heart and bloom by your side, just as I always wished. Never forget that true love knows no end." Tears streamed down William's face as he absorbed the depth of Elizabeth's words. "So that's what the earrings meant," he whispered to himself, his heart racing. It was a revelation he had never imagined. The earrings Emily had worn the first time he saw her were not a burden, but a blessing, a symbol of the love Elizabeth wanted him to have. He recalled Emily's words when she said that gardening helped her overcome her grief. "She has also experienced loss, just like I have. How could I have been so blind?" William felt a tremendous weight being lifted from his shoulders. With his mind racing, he got up and headed to the garden, where he had left Emily working with the flowers. The sun was still shining, and the atmosphere was filled with freshness and hope. As he approached, he saw Emily kneeling by a flower bed, her hands dirty with soil as she planted new seedlings. She looked up and smiled, but there was a hint of concern in her eyes. "William, is everything okay?" she asked, standing up and brushing off her hands. I found something that belonged to Elizabeth," he began, his voice trembling but determined. "A diary. She wrote about her dreams, about us, and about you." Emily hesitated, her expression shifting from curiosity to slight apprehension. "About me? What did she say?" William took a deep breath, feeling the vulnerability that honesty brings. "She left the earrings for the woman I would love after her. Elizabeth always wanted me to be happy, to move on." He hesitated for a moment, looking into her eyes. "And I want to, Emily. I want to build a future with you." Emily's eyes sparkled with a mix of surprise and emotion. "You don't have to feel guilty, William. I never wanted to replace Elizabeth. I just found joy in reviving this garden just like you are doing now." William smiled, a genuine smile that made his heart beat again. "I know, but it's time to truly let her go. I want you to know that the choice to love again is mine. And if you're willing, I want us to do this together." Emily looked at him, a soft smile forming on her lips. "I would love that, William. Let's make this garden a place that celebrates life. Our life." The sun began to set, painting the sky in orange and pink, and as William and Emily drew closer, a new understanding blossomed between them. Just like the plants they were nurturing, they were ready to embrace the future together, carrying with them the memory of Elizabeth, but also the love that was about to flourish. As the twilight light filtered through the leaves of the newly planted tree, William and Emily shared a moment of pure intimacy. The scent of the flowers beginning to bloom around them enveloped them in an atmosphere of renewal and hope. William, with his heart racing, leaned in towards Emily, his eyes reflecting the gentle light of the evening. "I never thought I could feel this way again," he confessed, his voice a whisper heavy with emotion. "Elizabeth will always be part of me, but you have brought something new into my life." Emily smiled, her eyes sparkling like the stars beginning to appear in the sky. "William, I never imagined I could connect with someone so quickly. It's as if our pasts were intertwined." Just then, a mailman appeared at the gate, interrupting the delicate atmosphere. He approached the mansion, holding a letter that seemed to carry special weight. William, noticing the mailman's presence, stepped away from Emily, his curiosity instantly piqued. "Excuse me, just a moment," he said, already heading toward the gate. As he took the letter, a feeling of anticipation washed over him. The handwriting was unmistakable, a graceful script he recognized immediately as belonging to Elizabeth. "What is it?" Emily asked, her voice anxious as she noticed the change in William. He carefully opened the envelope, his fingers trembling slightly. "It's a letter from Elizabeth," he announced, his eyes wide as he read aloud. "William, if you're reading this, it means I am no longer by your side. My only concern has always been your happiness. I want you to know that I left something for you, and for the woman who I hope you will find after my departure." Emily stepped closer, her breath caught in her throat as William continued to read. "I left a part of my inheritance for a community project, a place that you and your future partner could transform into a space of love and joy, a garden that reflects the beauty of life and memory." William paused, his mind racing with the implications of that revelation. "A community project, a garden," he murmured, thoughtful. "She wanted me, us, to do something together." "This is amazing, William," Emily exclaimed, excitement in her voice. "We can turn the garden into a space that honors Elizabeth and at the same time creates new memories for the community." William looked into Emily's eyes, feeling a wave of emotions. "Do you think we can?" he asked, a mix of insecurity and hope in his voice. "I want to do this. I want to honor Elizabeth and at the same time allow something new to blossom between us." "Of course we can," Emily assured him, holding his hand. "Let's plan everything. Imagine a community garden where people can come, plant, share stories, and celebrate life. That would be a beautiful tribute to Elizabeth." Feeling lighter, William smiled genuinely for the first time in a long while. "Yes, let's do it," he decided, his determination renewed. "Let's create a space that represents her love and what we are building together." As the daylight faded, they moved closer again under the tree they had planted in memory of Elizabeth. William looked at Emily, his heart overflowing with gratitude and love. "I can't change the past, but I can build a future, and I want you to be part of it." Emily smiled, her eyes shining with emotion. "And I want to be by your side, William. Let's do this together." Then, under the starry sky, William leaned in toward Emily, and their lips met in a soft, passionate kiss. It was a moment of surrender, acceptance, and a new beginning. The garden around them, now full of life and promises, symbolized not only the love blossoming between them, but also the eternal memory of Elizabeth, who would always be present in their hearts. The final scene unfolded with a tone of hope as the community gathered to celebrate the new project, ready to face the future with love and unity. William and Emily, hand in hand, looked toward the horizon, prepared to face whatever came next. Together, we have reached the end of this touching story. If you enjoyed it and want to see more tales like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Right now, there's a playlist of videos on your screen. If you want to keep watching these heartfelt stories, just click on it and you'll be watching in no time. And now, tell us in the comments which city you're watching from and leave a like to support our work. Now, a sincere question. Do you agree with what happened in the story? We'd love to know your opinion. Until the next video.